Good morning, everyone. Welcome once again to Benning Auto Parts Facebook page. It is Thursday morning here at the shop. We're got a good morning started. We had a real good day yesterday. We had several engines picked up that were ready to go. We got the Pontiac delivered to the customer. We got the 327 for the 64 Chevrolet back to the customer. So that clears up a little room and gets us ready for the next bunch of engines we got to do. So as we promised earlier in the week, we're kind of focusing this month on shop services. We've already done the head department, kind of went through each of the pieces of equipment and try and explain to you what we use it for, what it does. So we're going to follow that theme again this morning. We're going to kind of highlight the block department. Got two people that work in the block department, Steve and Jeff. This is where all the boring gets done, the cam bearings get installed, line boring gets done. There's a lot of stuff that happens here, getting a block ready for the next process of assembly. So what we're going to do right now, we're going to give you a little tour, and we're going to kind of just talk about each piece of the equipment and where the process starts and where it ends up. So hope you enjoy it. Just follow along with us, and we'll show you everything that goes on in this department. So the first piece of equipment that we have here, this is a hot wash tank. As you can see, this tank opens up. We basically use this for cleaning up aluminum heads, aluminum blocks, items that you can't put in the vat because the acid will kind of destroy aluminum. So you have to be very careful. So this is a hot spray wash. It's got a timer on it. It's got a heater on it. We set the heads up in here. This rotates. You can close the door here, as you see. Close the door. Set it to a timed wash, however long you need it. Generally 15-20 minutes is generally enough. It's got a cleaning agent, a biodegradable cleaning agent that we put in here that helps to get the grease and grime and such as that off of the cylinder heads, off the blocks, off pistons, whatever we got in there. So this is primarily again used for aluminum heads. So aluminum heads, aluminum components. So with that, I'm gonna slip right over here real quick to this. This is a acid vat. When the block comes in, heads come in, we get it all tore down, and then we get everything out of it. We get freeze plugs out of it, cam bearings out of it, and then we put it in the vat right here, and generally stays in the vat sometimes overnight. Sometimes it doesn't take quite as long as that, but if it's a real nasty, dirty block, we'll leave it in there overnight and let it soak real good, and then we'll get it out and wash it off real good. So that's really the very first step for cast iron blocks, is where they start, or big heads, cast iron heads. So that's where that process starts. So let's move on over here. So right here, we do a lot of press work. Bearings, axle bearings, different things like this. This is a 20,000 pound press that we use to press bearings off and on. We use that quite often, especially with hub bearings or axle bearings. And this is a much lighter press here. Says it's good for 60,000 pounds. I don't know that it would take that much, but that's kind of a lightweight press that we use. So moving along over here, this is a line boring machine. A lot of times if your block has broken a crankshaft, or if it's spun a main bearing, we can set up on this machine. It's got a fixture here, set the block up on it. It's got a bar, a line bar that we set up, and it line hones, the line bores, the main journals on a block. Once we torque them down, we can take a measurement and get a spec on it, and then Steve can go in there and straighten up your line bore with this machine right here. It's a very, very useful machine, very time consuming, but that's one way to save a block. In other words, if it's spun a bearing or broke a main cap or broke a crankshaft, then you can generally fix it on this. So moving on over here, So this is the boring bar that we use for boring blocks. I think David's got some video of this actually in process of how it works. So again, it's got a fixture. We attach the block to the fixture, and then this is a floating table right here. It moves back and forth, and then we line up on it. And this is actually where we do the boring of the cylinders. It bores one cylinder at a time. You can do 4 on one side, and then of course you've got to flip it over and do the other side. 4 cylinders will line up on here, and you can just do a 4-cylinder right straight in line. This is a particular machine is a Rottler. Rottler is a well-known company in the machining business. Rottler's been doing boring bars and fixtures and turning fixtures for a long time. So this is a Rottler machine. Now once the block comes off of the boring bar, it comes over here and it goes to a honing cabinet. So again, Steve sets the block up in here. It has honing stones right here, and this is air operated, and the stones will go down and put the real fine finish on the cylinders that we're looking for. And basically we have different stones that give us the different finishes that we're looking for. Cast iron rings take one finish. Chromoly rings, steel top rings take another finish. And so to get that, to achieve that finish we're looking for, we use different stones. The stones basically are a different grit. Some are 120, some are 60. There's just different grits of stones. Of course, it's got a gauge on it that pressure, Steve, when he's honing the gauge, he can look at the gauge and see how much pressure is being put on the cylinders, and that's what he goes by. That's what he gauges it off of. Right over here, this is a magnafluxing machine. In other words, we got a crankshaft that we want to check and make sure it's not cracked. We clean the shaft real good. We set it up in this machine right here, and it uses a light. We put some dye on it. It's called MagnaGlow, and we put dye on it. And you use that light, and that light will run to any cracks that might be in the journals. Aftermarket shafts, especially big block shafts, real hard steel shafts are real prone to cracking if they get an excessive amount of heat. So before we grind a shaft for a customer, if it's a suspect shaft, if it's had an issue with a bearing or spun a bearing or something like that, we always like to MagnaGlow it first and make sure it's good before we turn it, and then find out after we've ground it that we've wasted that money for the customer and find out it's cracked. So this is kind of the first step of checking out the crankshaft after we get it cleaned and get it MagnaGlowed for the customer. And if it checks out good, no cracks, of course we'll move on and get it get it ground for the customer. So that's a very important machine. We use it a lot. So moving right over here, this is a rod machine. We rebuild a lot of rods for customers. Basically, the rod goes through here. It's got a gauge. You can turn it on, and it refinishes the inside of the big end of the rod. And then we measure it. We've got a measuring device right here. We can measure it, look for run out, different things like that of the rod to get it back into spec, because we got a spec that we print out that tells you what the inside diameter of the rod journals should be. So we use this machine quite a bit. Over here is another, I call this Godzilla. This is the big boring bar. We don't use this as much anymore, but we used to use it a lot because that's all we had until we upgraded into this Rottler here. But this will actually go down and bore a cylinder is about 2.5 inches. It's real small, 2.5-inch diameter cylinder, and it can go out to an 8-inch cylinder. Some of these single cylinder old Ford tractors, hit and miss we call them, hit and miss cylinders, we can bore those on this machine right here, because we can take it out to, like I say, up to 8 inches. Doesn't get as used as much as it used to, but it's still a good working machine, and we still use it occasionally every now and then. So that's about it in the block department as far as equipment and how we use it and what it's used for. This is Steve's little workbench. Of course, he puts cam bearings in over here. He puts his freeze plugs in over here after he gets all the preliminary process done of the machining of it. He installs his rods on his pistons over here. He's got a little press, one more little piece of equipment right here. This is a press right here. We primarily use this press for taking pistons off the rods. You got press fit pins. He's got a couple fixtures where he can press the pin out of the piston, so that we can number one, take the old piston off, put the new piston on. That's how he does it. He takes them off with the press, and then when we reinstall them, we use a rod heater. We basically heat the rod up. Here's the rod heater over here. Basically right here, as you can kind of hone in on that, this heater heats the rod up, expands the small end of the rod, and the pin will just push right in it. That's a better way of installing pistons on the rods because it has no distortion. In other words, you're not pressing and taking a chance on breaking the piston or taking a chance on distorting the rod. So we actually heat it up, and then the pin will actually slide right in, and then once it cools back down, it's in place. So this machine gets a lot of use. So that's about it in the block department. Very important department, very important part of our business. Glad you tuned in. We just wanted to give you a little tour on how things process through the block department, what happens once you drop your block off, as it goes through the process of cleaning, magnafluxing, checking bore, boring, honing, cam bearings installed, freeze plugs installed, rods on and off of your pistons on and off of your rods. So all that takes place right here. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Give you a little update on a little tour on how things move through this part of the shop. So hope you tune in next week. We're probably going to be highlighting our crankshaft department. Along with that, we'll do balancing. We'll highlight the balancing once again and answer some of the questions that we get about engine balancing. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Stay tuned next week, and we'll give you the next part of this little series of our services that are offered through our machine shop here. Thanks for joining in, and we'll talk to you next week.